Good morning, happy Monday. Thanks for joining me on 10 Minutes to Get More. I'm really excited today because I've got a special guest joining me who has created a really unique data set and really interesting report all about salaries and employee satisfaction in hotel tech. So welcome to the stage, Ed Clark. Good morning.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back again. Well, when we had you on 2 or 3 months ago, you were at the stage of collecting data for this report. So why don't you tell us what's happened?
A lot has happened. A lot of data that I wasn't expecting, that a lot of people wasn't expecting, came to light. So yeah, really excited to get into a few of the points today.
Nice. And just as a reminder, what was the aim of creating this report for you?
Great question. It came about because I wanted to find out how I could add the most value to the hotel tech industry as possible for everyone. And the answer was quite clearly data that no one had ever seen. So a lot of hotel tech companies have data on hospitality in general, but not on the talent side of things. And so I wanted to know how much people were earning across hotel tech, if it really was, one large industry where all the players act in the same way and have the same results. I also wanted to know how happy people were, and to also compare it to hospitality on the ground as well, to see if there's any differences there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because hotels are obsessed with benchmarking, and yet hotel tech companies don't have benchmarking data in this area. So it seems like it should have already been happening, but it hadn't been.
Yeah, I was surprised that this was never done before, but here we go. I took the opportunity.
You're the pioneer, Ed. Awesome. Yeah, and I love the transparency it gives. And I think we spoke about this in our last live, so we won't go into loads of details, but how much information it gives the candidate and the hiring manager and HR. It's not like it's a one-sided piece of data. It's actually really helpful for everyone in the industry.
Absolutely. It's going to make the market more efficient as well. And I think, I hope that hiring managers and founders aren't scared of this. I actually see it as a massive opportunity for them to pinpoint where they're at, how they compare to their peers, and see, if they're better than their peers, then they can shout to the rooftops about it. And if they're not, then they know where they need to work to attract the best talent for them.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. So we have a couple of points that we're going to dive into in a bit more detail. And the first one is very close to my heart because it's about how people are feeling in their jobs, and especially in the areas of OTA and distribution. I know a lot of my audience are in OTAs and distribution companies, and I worked in B2B distribution for a decade, I think. So where you measured employee satisfaction, which you're calling eNPS, the Net Promoter Score, the lowest ones, 2 out of the 3 lowest ones were in OTA and distribution. And that was despite OTAs having one of the highest pay brackets as well, which I thought was super interesting. Any other light you'd like to shed on that, or any opinions or anecdotes you might have around that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one where you earn the most, but you're the unhappiest. Now, unfortunately, the survey doesn't have enough questions to pinpoint why. It's just uncovered what it is. And from my anecdotal experience, so not backed by data, I've noticed that people in other startups, in other areas of hotel tech, they seem to have a real mission towards helping hoteliers. They really believe that they're adding real value. What I've noticed on the OTA side is it's more of a job. They kind of know that there's a love-hate relationship between hoteliers and OTAs because they're just needed. I don't get that sense from employees that I've spoken to there that they're absolutely in love with their tool, that they think it's really adding value to hotels. They just know that they're a real necessity, and they're trying to squeeze the hoteliers as much as possible for profit. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And thinking back to my time, and obviously I still have a lot of friends and ex-colleagues still in the area as well, I think there's something about the really cyclical nature of it. Like,
yeah,
if you're a salesperson, you can close a big deal and you can have a great quarter, for example, but the wins that you get in OTAs and distribution are actually relatively few and far between. But then there's a lot of cyclical stuff that has to keep happening. You have to recontract, you have only a few levers to pull to be able to change things for your clients. So I think there's a bit of a lack of feeling of control, and I guess you don't get the same dopamine hit of like signing your first deal or signing your first enterprise deal or whatever it is.
And I think there's actually another point to consider as well that we spoke about before starting this call, was that the relevance of AI and the mass layoffs that are happening as well in this area. Now, I think the result of that is that colleagues probably shield themselves from an emotional perspective from being too close to their colleagues, because they know that any day they might have to tell them, you don't have a job anymore. I think it's quite different to the other type of companies, startups, for example, in other areas where it's okay, you're in the trenches with your colleagues, you're together, you go out together as well, you build really strong bonds, and I think that's probably quite different as well. I'd say the OTAs, they work in more of a corporate style than startup style, and that will make a big difference on people's happiness.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just add one more thing, which may or may not be relevant. That since I started working in B2B distribution, and it didn't really feel very techy at that time, people have been telling me that B2B distribution is dead and that everyone's going to be going direct and online. So I wonder if there's also a feeling, and now it's changing with AI and how our jobs are changing, there's a feeling underlying of like, oh, this industry, what is the future of this part of the industry? Or how does my future look in it? And maybe it's hard to stay attached to it. Whereas if you're selling, for example, selling a PMS or an RMS product, which you really believe in, the product roadmap, it's adding value for hotels, you can see a direction that you're going in, perhaps it's easier to be satisfied in your job and feel a sense of purpose than it is with this cyclical nature, and we don't know where it's going and we're not really valued.
Yeah, completely agree with that. If I was sitting in Booking.com, to be honest with you, I'd be pretty worried about my job, to be honest. I'd be worried about Booking.com becoming redundant, of a technology taking over. But even that technology that takes over, is someone else going to make that technology redundant in the next few weeks because of AI? And the truth is, no one knows. Everyone's got an opinion, which is fine, but no one knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. Cool. So that was point one. I would love to hear in the comments what people think about that. And point two that I thought was really relevant for my audience was about the differences in pay between the genders, so between men and women. And from the report, you found that base pay actually was the same or almost similar, but what was different was bonuses and extra compensation, if I'm right. Was that the right? Yeah.
Yeah. So men and women earn the same basic salaries, but there's a $15,000 difference between what men earn at the top and what women earn at the bottom in terms of variable pay.
Variable pay. Okay.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me the most, and as well as there's a big difference between genders when it comes to asking and getting a raise, for example, as well.
So I'm really interested in this point. So there were a couple of points that came up in the data. Women were less represented in senior roles where there's the chance for bigger bonuses, but then also women ask for raises less often, and when they do ask, they're less likely to get it than the men that have asked. Is that right, from what you've seen?
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah. Just to be very clear, out of the total women that asked for a raise and got it, it's 38.3%. Compared to men that asked a raise and got it, it's 49.3%. It is a considerable difference. It's a 10% difference.
Yeah.
Those who asked that didn't get it, on the women's side, it's 22.1%. For men, it's 16%. For the women that didn't ask and got it, 22% got it. On the men, it's about the same. It's 21.9%. So there's no difference there. For men who didn't ask and didn't get it, For women who didn't ask and didn't get it, 17.5%. And for men, it's lower, it's 12.8%. So clearly there's a bias. Men are doing better. Men are getting more opportunities, let's say. That's what I was saying.
And women, that's probably also contributing to satisfaction, because women are then more likely to be stuck in not feeling rewarded and valued for what they're doing, even when they're putting their necks out and trying to ask for something, which in itself can be a bit risky as well. So that's got to contribute to satisfaction as well.
Well, it's reflected worldwide across all the hotel tech company types. Across the board, women are unhappier than men across the board. So the ENPS for men in general is 12.1, and for women it's minus 3.4. What that means, because it's ENPS, it's quite interesting. It means that there are more detractors, more people unhappy who do not recommend working in this industry amongst women than those who are indifferent or happy there.
Yeah. And it's such a shame, because we know there's lots of women in the industry, and it's a whole other topic about how women move up into senior roles and get paid what they're worth. But for having that many women in the industry and to be that unhappy, it's just sad, isn't it? Because everyone deserves to have a job that they love and do work that's rewarding. So that could be a whole other topic. I won't go into it too much. So what can we do about it? Obviously, now we're just kind of spitballing some ideas. And I think it's really important to say that individuals can change things, but also we do live in systems. Like, we live in mostly a patriarchal world. We also live in a capitalist world. We live in a world where a few people have a lot of the money and a lot of the power. So there's things that we can't control. And I think it's always worth remembering that, because we can't put all the blame on the women for not asking for a raise, for example. We can't put all the blame on one company when actually it's a worldwide problem. But there are things that individuals can do, and there are things that companies can do. Yep. Anything that pops up for you, Ed, that you feel is a priority that needs to kind of change based on the topics we talked about?
Absolutely. On the individual sides, women in general should ask more, because men ask way more. Men seem to be way more confident than women, and I've felt this personally as well. I feel like I need to cheerlead women more and give them more confidence when they apply than men. I've met some women who you can do everything that's asked for in a job description and more, and they still ask me, I'm not sure I'm the right person, on the skill basis. When it's men, if they just hit 60% of what can be done in a job description, they're still like, oh yeah, I'll go for it. I think I'd be great for it. So that's the difference in behavior, which is quite funny, but also it's important for women to at least be aware of this.
Yeah.
For me, the most interesting change that can be done, though, that I see as an opportunity, is for the companies. Now, if you see that there's a big disparity in these numbers within your company, which you should be able to find out in your HR tools that you use and the software that you use, at least you know what you need to change. But once you've reached that equilibrium, let's say, that's something worth shouting about. If I was the CEO and I had that data, I would shout about it on LinkedIn. I guarantee you will get some great talent going after you.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a way of standing out. And a lot of companies have been doing it for many years on the DEI basis. Now, I think now is a great time to do it. And now I can, if I want to, I can look at a specific segment in hotel tech, and I can find out what the levels are of all the gender equality side of things. So if you're in that sector and you know what the average is, you're going to want to aim to be at the top, and that's worth boasting about. That's a great way of, in terms of employer branding, setting yourself apart from your competitors.
Yeah.
Some areas are extremely competitive. Obviously, revenue management systems, but let's talk about guest engagement technology, your chatbots.
There's many of them in the market.
If you're the one that can confidently say that you treat women and men equally with equal opportunities and that you have proper salary bands, it's great. You're going to save your recruitment and HR team a lot of time and headaches.
Yeah, and that goes for retention as well, right? If you're in a company where you can trust that you're being paid correctly and that you have the same opportunities, I don't think anywhere is ever going to be perfect. But if you have initiatives that are working towards that, for example, closing that confidence gap, maybe seeking people out to invite them to apply for promotion rather than just letting whoever applies for a promotion, I think things like that where you can be more proactive as well would be awesome and would really help. Cool. And then for any individuals that do want to try and fight the system from an individual standpoint, I obviously coach people. So we work a lot on confidence, knowing your own value, how to communicate your value, and that kind of stuff. So get in touch. And I'm going to pop up a QR code because if you're interested in the data, and you should be. So I opened this report and I was like, oh my God, 65 pages. I'm not sure if I'm going to read that. And then I was literally glued to it because every page is gold. And then I asked Ed to pull some different stats for me because that there's so many different things in there, and the different ways you can look at them will give you so much information. So if you click on the QR code, it will take you to a Google form and you put your details in and you get access straight away. And follow Ed on LinkedIn as well if you're not already.
Thanks so much, Emily.